Have you ever really looked at your calendar? I mean, really looked at it. The names of our months, January, February, March, and all the rest, we see them every single day. But what if I told you they're more than just words on a page? They're actually echoes from a forgotten world, a world filled with powerful gods, super ambitious emperors, and a really strange mathematical glitch that, believe it or not, still shapes our lives today. I mean, just think about it for a second. When was the last time you wrote down a date? Maybe you were signing something important or just sending a text to make plans. You use these names without even thinking. They are so familiar, so deeply baked into our lives that we just take them for granted. But these words, they are a direct line, a living connection to the ancient Romans. It's this incredible legacy that has somehow managed to define how we measure our time for thousands of years. But this is where this story gets really weird. If you happen to know a little Latin or even languages like Spanish or French, you might have noticed something off about our calendar. Septem is Latin for 7. Octo, well, that's 8, like an octagon. Novem is 9, and decem is 10, like a decade. So why in the world are September, October, November, and December our 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th months? It feels like a huge mistake, right? Like a typo that no one ever bothered to fix. But it's not a mistake. It's a puzzle. And the only way to solve it is to travel way back in time to a year that looked very different from ours. Okay, so the key to this whole mystery is a forgotten calendar. And this calendar only had 10 months. Just 10. I want you to imagine a year that didn't start in the dead of winter, but with the first signs of spring in March. This calendar was all about agriculture. It tracked the seasons for planting and for harvesting. And then when winter came and the ground froze over, the calendar just stopped. For about 60 days, time was literally uncounted. It was just this dark, nameless void before the whole cycle started over again. This was the world of the early Romans, a world where time itself basically took a winter vacation. So, let's break this down, because this timeline shows the 3 game-changing moments that turned that old Roman calendar into the one hanging on your wall right now. First, way back around 753 BC, you've got that original 10-month calendar that kicks off in March. Simple enough. Then, about 50 years later, Rome's second king, a guy named Numa Pompilius, decided that having a 60-day gap with no name was just way too messy. So he added 2 months, January and February. But he stuck them at the end of the year to fill in that winter gap. And then comes the big one. In 49 BC, Julius Caesar looked at the calendar and realized it was a total mess. It had drifted way out of sync with the actual seasons. So he did something huge. He borrowed ideas from the super accurate Egyptian solar calendar, reformed the whole system, and, this is the crucial part, he moved the start of the year to January 1st. That single move created the calendar we know and, well, it created the naming puzzle we're about to finally solve. All right, now that we have the backstory, we can finally dive into the months themselves. The first 6 months are like a who's who of the Roman gods. It's a journey through mythology, ancient rituals, and deep cultural beliefs that, you'll see, still pop up in our lives today. Let's start with January, the gateway to our new year. It is perfectly named for Janus, the Roman god of gateways. He was the god of beginnings and endings, of every door, every threshold, and every new start. He was always shown with 2 faces, one looking back at the past year and the other looking forward into the future. He literally embodies the idea of a transition. So when Caesar decided to move the start of the year, there was no more perfect choice than Janus to be the patron of the very first month. Next up is February. Now remember, in the old calendar, this was the last month of the year. So what do you do at the end of the year? You clean up. It was a time for purification. The name comes from a festival called Februa, which was basically a massive citywide spring cleaning for the soul. Priests would perform all these rituals to wash away the bad luck and the mistakes of the past 12 months. Part of this involved using these instruments called Februa. Often they were just strips of goat hide to sort of symbolically whip the city and its people clean. It was a whole month for saying you're sorry, for settling your debts, and for honoring the dead before the new year started fresh in March. And now we get to March, the original New Year's Day. It was dedicated to one of Rome's most important gods, Mars. Now, Mars was a pretty complex figure. He wasn't just the god of war, he was also a god of agriculture. So as the winter snows started to melt, March was the signal for 2 huge things to happen. First, the fields were finally ready for planting, so you'd pray to Mars to protect the crops. But at the same time, the end of winter meant the roads were clear enough for the Roman legions to start marching again. It was the official start of the military campaign season.
So March was this powerful month of new beginnings, a time for both planting seeds of life and waging brutal war, all embodied by its patron god.
After all the intensity of March, we get April, the month of awakening. Its name is thought to come from this beautiful Latin verb aperio, which means to open. And that's exactly what happens in April, right? The world just opens up. Flower buds burst open, trees start to get their leaves back. The whole earth just seems to be waking up. It's a month all about fertility and rebirth, and it was fittingly associated with the goddess of love herself, Venus. By the time May rolled around, the growing season was really underway, and this made it a month of, well, of anxious hope. The crops were in the ground, and for an agricultural society like Rome, their entire survival depended on a good harvest. So to make sure everything went well, they turned to Maya. She was an ancient earth goddess of growth. They'd offer her sacrifices and prayers, all in the hopes of a bountiful harvest. For them, the success of the crops was the success of the empire, and Maya held the key. And that brings us to June, the month of love and marriage, dedicated to the queen of all the gods, Juno. She was the fierce protector of women, the guardian of marriage, and the patron of childbirth. Her influence was so huge that the Romans believed June was the absolute best, most favorable time to get married. So, the next time you're at a June wedding, just take a moment and remember that you are part of this beautiful tradition that stretches back thousands of years, a tradition rooted in the worship of a powerful, benevolent goddess. Pretty cool, right? So, after that amazing tour of the Roman gods, we get to a turning point in the story. The next few months originally were named with a very simple, practical logic. They were just numbers. But that all changed when two of the most powerful men in history decided they wanted to literally write themselves into the calendar, forever changing how we mark time. Let's talk about July. For centuries, this month was just called Quintilis. You can probably guess it just meant the fifth month because if you start counting from March, that's what it was. But after Julius Caesar was assassinated, the month became a living monument to him. The Roman Senate decided to immortalize Caesar by renaming the month Julius in his honor. And it's a pretty fitting tribute when you think about it. This was the man who didn't just conquer nations, he conquered time itself by fixing their broken calendar. Well, you can't have one Caesar without the other, right? Following that same logic, the very next month, Sextilis, or the sixth month, was renamed to honor Augustus Caesar. He was the adopted son of Julius, the very first official Roman emperor, and the guy who started a 200-year period of peace called the Pax Romana. This specific month was chosen to celebrate some of his greatest military and political victories, making it a permanent testament to his incredible legacy. And hey, you don't have to just take my word for it. This right here is a direct quote from the actual decree from the Roman Senate. They're explaining exactly why they picked this month to honor Augustus. For them, it was a time of incredible fortune for the empire. It was the month he conquered Egypt, and maybe even more importantly, it was the month he finally put an end to decades of bloody civil war. It's a powerful reminder that our calendar isn't just a grid of days, it's a history book. Okay, so with the gods and emperors all in their proper places, we can finally go back to the puzzle that started this whole thing. That mysterious glitch in the numbers that's been hiding in plain sight for centuries. The final 4 months of our year hold the key to a forgotten world, a world where time was simply counted differently. This slide right here, this is the smoking gun. September, October, November, December. Our last 4 months are all named after the Latin words for 7, 8, 9, and 10. Unlike July and August, which got those splashy emperor rebrands, these months just never changed. The Romans, it seems, just left the original practical number-based names right where they were. And that one decision had a huge, lasting impact on our calendar. And there it is. The puzzle is officially solved. These names made perfect sense in that old 10-month calendar, when the year started in March. September was the 7th month, October was the 8th, and so on down the line. But when Julius Caesar moved New Year's Day to January 1st, he took January and February from the end of the year and plopped them down at the beginning. That single action shoved the entire calendar forward, pushing every single one of those numbered months back by 2 spots. But the names? The names stuck. And that created the permanent mathematical glitch that we still live with today. It's a really fascinating reminder of how one decision can echo through thousands of years of history. Now that we've unlocked all these secrets of the calendar, let's switch gears and talk about some practical tips for mastering the months in our everyday lives. From a little grammar to some pronunciation quirks, we'll cover a few things that'll help you navigate our ancient timekeeping system. Okay, here is a super quick and easy grammar tip to help you avoid a really common mistake.
The names of the months, January, February, all the way to December, they are always capitalized. Always. Why? Because they're proper nouns. They're named after specific gods, people, and rituals. The seasons, on the other hand, winter, spring, summer, autumn, they're just general nouns, so you don't capitalize them unless, they're at the beginning of a sentence. It's a small detail, but it's an important one for writing clearly. Here is a classic, clever little trick to help you remember which months have 30 days and which have 31. It's called the knuckle mnemonic. Go ahead, make a fist and look at your knuckles. Every raised knuckle is a month with 31 days, and every valley in between is a shorter month. Let's try it together. Start with your first knuckle on your left hand. That's January, 31 days. The dip next to it is February, the weird short one. The next knuckle is March, 31. The next dip is April, 30. It is such a simple, physical way to lock in that tricky information. February, the month of purification, is also the month of pronunciation puzzles. In American English especially, we almost always drop that first R. So it sounds like February instead of February. This is actually a really common linguistic thing. It's called dissimilation, which is just a fancy way of saying we get lazy and simplify sounds to make words easier and faster to say. So while the spelling looks a little intimidating, the way most of us say it is actually pretty straightforward once you know the secret. And what about our final 4 months, the number months? Well, they all share this beautiful, common rhythm. It's a weak, strong, weak syllable pattern that can really help you nail the pronunciation. Just listen closely. September, October, November, December. Hear that? Da-dum-da. It's the same for all 4. Practice that rhythm, really feel it in the words, and you'll be sounding like a native speaker in no time. So, the next time you look at a calendar, I hope you remember that you're not just looking at a schedule. You are looking at a story. It's a story of gods and emperors, of conquests and reform, of rituals and numbers. And it's a story that is still being written every single day in the words we use. And it really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? What other stories are hiding all around us, in plain sight, just waiting to be discovered?
You are doing great. Don't stop. Subscribe and watch the next video.